What's up, geniuses? Welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Rob Markman. Today is Monday. Why? Because we were closed on Sunday. Mm-hmm. You like that, right? Nah, Jesus is King is out. Kanye's long-awaited album, long delayed, is finally here. So, on this show, we had to talk about it. I brought a couple guests with me. We're going to discuss the music, discuss the politics, and everything surrounding it. First up, we have Rolling Stone staff writer, my man, Charles Holmes. Welcome back to For the Record.
Thank you. About to give you faith talk, not wraith talk.
Next up, we have my man. Man, I love talking music with this guy. He is the co-host of the Grassroots podcast with my homegirl, Erin Simon. They have a live show coming up November 14th in New York City. Check that out if you're in town.
Yes.
Brandon Hall, welcome back to For the Record, man.
Thank you, man. I love you guys, man.
Nah, man. I feel like we were supposed to have this talk the first time that Jesus is King was supposed to come out.
Yeah.
And it never came out, so we had to cancel the whole show. So I'm glad. So let's just talk about right off the rip, man, expectations coming into this album. Brandon, I want to start with you. You're a big Kanye fan too, right?
I am a Kanye fan. I am a Kanye fan. I honestly didn't know what to expect. I think Kanye has a certain format, right? Like when he releases projects, like 1 minute he's Jesus, next minute he is Pablo, or he feels like Pablo. Now he's Jesus. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know what to expect. But the other thing with that is I'm conflicted because I feel like this is like threading the needle. Because if it's not genuine, I don't know how you could kind of come back from it. Like I just have so many views on this project that I don't know. Like even with Kurt Franklin, why is it that Kurt Franklin was initially working with Kanye and then clips released where, you saw kind of Kurt giving him that real talk of, I don't know if this is genuine or people, this is a different ball game. And then Kurt Franklin is nowhere to be found.
Right.
So, I mean, that's very telling for me too.
I was surprised that Chance wasn't a part of this
project. That's the other thing. Too. People that you would think are instrumental in gospel music, that have worked with Kanye, that are fans of Kanye and done, a number of projects with Kanye are nowhere in sight in this project.
I'll be honest. I'll be the first. I don't listen to very much gospel music. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know much about that world. But music that feels genuine. I feel like when I hear Chance, I don't question how genuine he is about his faith. You can say whatever you want about Chance and the album he just dropped, The Big Day. But I feel like this is really where he's at with his life.
Agreed.
With Kanye, sometimes I don't know. Charles, what was your expectations going? Firstly, do you listen to a lot of gospel music? Do you have?
I grew up on gospel.
Okay.
So I don't listen too much of it now, but I was definitely raised in the church.
Right.
But I thought this was going to be terrible. When I heard it at one of those listenings, I'm like, oh man, this is not finished. Right. And I was pleasantly surprised. I like the album. I'm like, it sounds like an album. There are drums here. You're not mumbling. Thank God New Body's not on it anymore. But yeah, I like the album. And I personally, at this point, I think Kanye West on this album was 100% genuine. It's just that he's talking nonsense. So I think he's totally on this Christianity wave. He's always been on it. It's just that when it comes out, it makes no sense to us as listeners.
Right. Yeah, and that's one thing to say, just so the audience knows. I mean, we're all fully aware of, this is dubbed, Kanye's gospel album. There's been a few tweaks where, one thing, he's not swearing, he's not promoting sex on this album, things of that nature, right? But there's a lot of Kanye-isms. First of all, he came into the game with Jesus Walks, so there's always been some faith aspect to his music, and there's always been some gospel aspect. A lot of the production sounds to me like there's like traditional Kanye production on here as well. So it didn't feel like this big departure, or I was listening to a new artist that I hadn't heard. Charles, what were some of the records that you were feeling like off the rip?
Oh man, Use This Gospel. Kenny G had the rap verse of the year, honestly. On God, amazing. Just amazing nonsense. Like, I love the shenanigans. Those two records, man, I love it.
Right. Brandon, what about you, man? What were some of the records that you were feeling?
On God is really dope. I really like the Kenny G record. Like for me, that
we're calling it the Kenny G record. We're not calling it the Clips record. The Clips are back.
Well, that's the thing. For me, the best parts about this album in this order is the production, Kenny G and the Clips. The Clips makes that record, takes that record
Right.
to the next level, as well as that the project to the next level, and then it's Kanye. I agree with you. Like with Kanye's lyrics, I just feel like it's not to be disrespectful, but I do feel like it's nonsense. Like it's very straightforward gospel music, like safe gospel music. Jesus, give us praise. Jesus,
Right.
like love Jesus, and I guess that's how it's supposed to be. That's the format of gospel music. He just doesn't have my buy-in yet. I do
But
believe he believes in the higher power and God. I
wasn't
just
that
don't know.
always Kanye? Like, wasn't that the same critique that he got for when he was rapping about blood diamonds
Yeah.
after Lupe had rapped about conflict diamonds?
Yeah.
And it was a very like surface level
Yeah.
take on the politics there.
But
I feel like Kanye always has that criticism throughout his
he
career.
does, but like I said earlier in the show, it's just that again, you just never know what Kanye
Right.
you're gonna get. Like one minute he again is Jesus and he believes this
Right.
whole big powerful thing of being eclectic and trying to change the landscape of music, and then the next minute he is something different, and that person that you bought into is no longer there. So I honestly don't know, you know what I mean, how to feel about the project. I like it. I think sonically it makes sense. I think it makes all the more sense now why he brought like Rhymefest and Consequence and all these people back into his circumference making this project, because it has that really, really old school Kanye vibe. You
Like
know what
Follow
I mean?
God, like
Follow
the sample on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it makes sense. I'm just hoping that it's kind of for the right reason, that this isn't like one of those marketing things where once this wave of music or this sound or feel of music for him is gone, that we don't lose that piece of him where he goes back into something else, because then I'm going to really judge.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, to me, this was Kanye 15 years ago, Jesus Walks. Like, I wrote about this in an article. Like, if you listen to the lyrics for Jesus Walks now, they sound way different. That whole record is about Jesus, but it's really about how radio won't play a Jesus record, how this is so radical for him, and this might affect his bottom line. Like, he's always talked about Jesus in the form of like consumerism and how much money Kanye West is making. Same thing with Yeezus and like New God and everything. That record, there's a lot of religious like tones for that record, but it's all about how the fashion industry won't accept Kanye.
Well, here's a theory that I have. It's not even a theory. It's plain as day. I think you're 1,000% right. I think Kanye gets off on breaking the barrier, right? So it's like, did he make Jesus Walks because of his faith? Or did he make Jesus Walks because if I could be the first rapper to get a gospel record on radio as a single? And the answer is probably, I don't doubt his faith. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sitting here to doubt a man's faith.
Yeah.
But there's a part of Kanye who thrives and needs to be the first one to bust through that wall or that barrier. That's what the whole rant was about, around 2013, when he was saying he was broke and trying to break into the fashion industry, and Mark Parker and Hal Sway. It was like, how dare rappers wear all the clothes and dictate all the fashion? Oh, but you're not gonna let me in. So breaking through on that, you know what I'm saying? The same thing with 808s, the same thing with wearing pink polos. He reminds you in the Big Boy interview, I think it was, because he's been getting a little bit of flack for the Chick-fil-A reference, and he's like, oh, I was the first rapper to tell rappers stop using the F word. You know what I'm saying? Like, he really gets off on being the first one through the door, and it makes me, that's why I have questions kind of about this album. Like, is it purely about your faith, or is it about being the first one through the door?
But Christianity, to me, growing up in the church, like, especially the black church, like, I am a Christian, but I cannot sit here and lie like big money is not a part of the church. So it's kind of like when I go to church, sometimes I'm like, yo, why is the pastor rolling up in a Mercedes Benz and everybody else here is not? Like, so to me, they're, as much as we want to kind of like throw Kanye under the bus, I'm like,
he's falling in line with what's going on. Let's talk about On Guard a little bit, right? And just the commercialism of it, right? I just want to go off of these lyrics, man. Off the 350s he supplied, the IRS want they 50 plus our ties. And that's over half the pie. I felt tried, that's on God. That's why I charge the prices that I charge. I can't be out here dancing with the stars. I cannot let my family starve. I go hard, that's on God. It's kind of like what we're talking about, right? Look, the Yeezys, some of the most popular shoes now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if not the most popular shoe amongst kids, but the price point is really high. And I remember when Kanye first came in talking about the Yeezys and he was asked about that high price point, he said eventually he wants to lower the price point and make them affordable for everybody. That hasn't happened.
Did you really believe that? Honestly,
He said it.
I could say I'm a millionaire. That shit ain't true.
but literally the other shoe drops and it's like, well, because the IRS wants to have plus tie.
Mm-hmm.
This is why
Yeah.
the Yeezys. I mean, is he wrong for being a capitalist and a Christian at the same time?
No,
I think this goes by.
we reward Jay-Z for doing the same
Right.
things. I'm sorry, those tax haven bars hit different from Kanye, bro.
Yeah.
That shit is a classic. They don't make egomaniacs like that anymore.
Yeah.
Like everybody's like, how dare Kanye? I'm like, nah, like this is amazing.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. But yeah.
I get it though. Like I get why his sneakers are the way that they are and priced the way that they are. But in the grand scheme of things, to Charles's point, this is the business of church, right? Like you look at your pastor that comes up in a Rolls Royce. It's like, how in the what are you doing? But at the actuality, they make a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of donations, and that's the business of it. So I think Kanye is doing what he can do from a music perspective with his clothing, as well as with the album, and just kind of fitting in line with Christianity or whatever his faith is, because I don't know what his faith is, but whatever it is, I think he's trying to fit into it. I just don't know how that's going to really land with consumers. That's my only thing with him, is that it's very, you know how I feel about it? I feel like he spoon-fed us this project. I think this is a tester. I think that's partially the reason why this is a lot of like, it's very, very easy lyrics, right? Like it's there's no real substance there outside of God, right? There's no substance there. And the other thing is that even if there was substance, it's spoon-fed just to give you enough so where he can say, oh, I tried it and you guys didn't mess with it.
Nah, but this album's projected to go number one, like selling streaming sales, however, whatever the math is now, over 200,000 the first week. He's probably going to have the number one album. Like, as much as people are protesting, we talked about this on Twitter, on our timelines at least, right? Are protesting how they're boycotting. I'm not listening to that. Yeah. I don't like it. Somebody's listening to it because it's doing numbers.
Kanye's bigger than he's ever been. Kanye the celebrity.
You wrote an article about this on Rolling Stone, so I'll keep going. Yeah.
So Kanye, like what we forget is that to me, Kanye is almost post music now. Everything that he does is in the guise of celebrity. So people are just going to check into the Kanye project because it's a Kanye project, whether there's hits or not. That does not matter. People are still going to go out and buy Yeezys. He's still connected to the Kardashian clan, who are the most followed people on Instagram. What we fail to realize is that we still want Kanye, like we're still like, oh, Kanye's competing musically with like Drake. I'm like, no, he's not. The music does not matter at this point.
You don't think it was a coincidence that he dropped on Kanye's birthday?
Who, Drake?
Yeah.
I don't think Drake cares. Like
No. I'm saying that Kanye dropped on Drake's birthday.
I don't think I've seen like some fuck shit in rap. I really think the album was just.
I think
delayed.
the IMAX thing had way more the business side of trying to get this out there. Like, yo, like this makes no sense. You're gonna look even crazier. But I do think like when I wrote about it, I was trying to express that like we saw the Forbes article, whatever you want to say about that.
Well, he's the top earner. Forbes estimates him as the top earner in hip hop.
Yeah, whether you want to believe that or not, you can still see that Kanye is being very, very successful, more so than ever. And it's partially because, like, yo, he is talking to the people right now who have the money. Him aligning with Donald Trump makes sense. Him aligning with wanting to align with a bunch of these tech people. I'm talking about Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey and all these people. That makes so much sense because he's living in Calabasas. He's realizing if I want to jump over this hurdle, if I want to be like Jay-Z, I need to start talking their language. And this whole Jesus is King thing makes so much sense.
Right.
Yeah. And that's where my fear is, though. Because it makes so much sense, is it genuine or not? And that's my thing. Not his faith. I'm saying just his route with music, his choice to say, hey, I don't want to do secular music anymore. I'm no longer doing that. Then he asked, the people that were working for him to not have sex throughout the entire process if you weren't married, right?
Yeah.
And that's great, but my thing is that really coming from a genuine place? And maybe that doesn't even matter, right? Like it's business. Maybe that's just what we chalk it up to. But for me, it just matters just from a more spiritual level. It's certain things with like, especially like with gospel music or faith, I just don't play with because I just, you know what I mean?
But Charles makes a good point, right? When you talk about, because I believe you and I hear you and I agree with you on like my faith, my spirituality, my religion, my relationship with God is something that maybe I personally may not want to forsake in certain ways. But it is hard to ignore, and we're being very naive to ignore that the business of religion is a booming.
Oh yeah.
business.
No. Let me be clear. That's why I said I agree
Right,
with Charles.
right.
This is smart. I don't. You'll never hear me. The only thing, even with the Trump stuff, but I get the reasons why. I feel like when you're in that tax bracket, a lot of people that are in that tax bracket or have that sort of access, yeah, a lot of the things that Trump does supports that. It supports their livelihood. It helps them. You know, he's in that crowd of people.
Yeah.
I just don't know long term.
But the way a lot of these wealthy Americans, like the top wealth in America, do it is they'll contribute to both parties, right? They're hedging their bets. Whoever gets into office, you know what I'm saying, we're going to get the tax breaks that we need based off of, you know, whose war chest you donate to. And a lot of them donate to both parties, right? Yeah. A lot of them are not walking around wearing the hats. You know, like there's an advantage to donating, right? And being in those rooms and talking. Look, talking to Trump helps Kim start getting people out of prison, even though we know there's somebody else doing the real work and she's the face of it. That's something that I think most people could be like, oh, wow, like, you know, you're working on prison reform. Like, this is dope. You need to be in a room in order to have those conversations. Yeah. You don't need to wear the hat, dog. Yeah. And he's been clear throughout his just talking about all this. I don't think that he actually understands the politics. And I think the wearing of the hat and the cozying up to Trump is a lot of it is, don't tell me, you know, as a Black American that I'm supposed to vote. Oh, you assume that I'm just going to vote Democrat. I'm not staying in your box. And I'm going to put on the hat without understanding the real politics behind it. Or even he's expressed that he doesn't really have a real interest in the politics behind it, right? Like
and that's the thing.
He said he doesn't vote.
Well, that's the thing. He doesn't vote, yet it says he wants to be president in 2020. He wears that red hat, but even with wearing the red hat, I think that he wears that hat to I guess fight. I don't really know that he really cares that about the whole "Make America Great Again," buying into that. I don't think that. I think it's going against the grain. To your point, hey, I'm going to be the first person to align with this gentleman. I'm going to be the first person to stand up, and maybe he just likes the hat. We don't know. You know what I'm saying? But
But he also has to acknowledge, and he's been very dismissive about how hurtful it is, and
maybe
not understanding of how people can actually be hurt by this. It's more than wanting to control you or see you vote one way or align yourself with one party. Like, it's hurtful.
And that's
to the people who helped build you up to where you are. Yeah. Musically. You know what I'm saying?
I think I've gotten to this point with Kanye, with most artists. When do we start thinking Kanye was intelligent in a lot of the ways that he went about stuff? For me, I was off the train for a while. I'm bro, you're just talking out of your ass, and that's fine. You make great music. I just personally think, like, sometimes we take a genius in one area and we can all sit here and say,
musical genius.
He's a musical genius. We do not have to make that line to politics or anything. Anytime he opens his mouth about Trump, I'm like, yeah, he's an idiot. He's uninformed. I just can't.
It's like the old Dave Chappelle joke, right? Yeah. Like 9/11 Towers, where's Ja? Somebody get Ja on the phone.
Yeah. But the other thing too, it also is product placement for him. I don't think that there's a coincidence that whenever he says something egregious about the Trump campaign or just its views on Trump or just that whole experience, that something else isn't being marketed in back of it. I also think that whenever he is, I look at it like his album rollout, right? Like, you remember back in the day with album rollouts, you would go do press, do a whole bunch of radio, and his rollout is this. It's the outlandish comments. It's acting erratic, or what we at least view as being erratic. I think at certain points he's very, very controlled, and he knows exactly what he's doing. He's trying to get a rise out of people, and it's working.
He kept us hostage. He kept he kept music writers and fans hostage for over a month. He's like, yo, I'm dropping my album. We're all up.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm dropping it on.
Yeah.
because as a music writer at Rolling Stone or any of the major or any not even the major publications or any publications, you have to write about it. Kanye West drops an album, you have to write
But
about
then it's like he doesn't drop it, so then I have
Right.
to write about it. But then he goes on Zane Lowe, and you got to write about that. And then the
Right.
Kardashians are doing something, and you got to tune into like
Right.
what's happening on the reality show. Like the funny thing about Kanye is he's made his rollout a 24/7 thing. Like we're still talking about the album now.
it. Right.
What other artists besides like the top ones do we talk about their albums past this?
It just came out Friday, like
But
3 days.
He's right though. I get what he's saying because it's Kanye and because there's so many things that have happened that have brought us to this point. Yeah, you're kind of vested at this point.
It's a month and a
It's like
half,
watching
though.
a TV
Right.
show.
Like it's a month and a half of us talking about one
Yeah, I agree.
album,
Right.
which
I
is
agree.
crazy.
What,
I agree.
What do we do? So he says this is who he is now, and there's going to be a change. So when Kanye goes out on tour, he's not going to perform the old music, or at least in the way that we've heard it. So he said he's going to switch up performances. Do we believe that?
Hell no.
No, I think he will. I think in order to do it, especially when he makes those statements of I'm no longer performing secular music, you have to. I foresee him removing or changing lyrics during performance. I don't think he'll curse in that old
Right.
music. I don't know how much of the record he can change, considering a lot of those records are hit records. Gold Digger, for example, like that is a smash record. How do you take the third verse off? You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
there's a lot there. So I think he'll figure out a way to do it. The other thing that I think what he's been doing is transitioning his shows into more of like a show, like
Right.
a theater-esque type of show.
Well, he's been
with
there since
theatrics.
Glow in the Dark.
And that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I think he was prepping us for a very long time of what we could anticipate with him. And I think this is the start of that. Now, what a Kanye show would be like if he doesn't perform any of those records and it's something different, maybe it's just going to be the Sunday service as the tour,
Right.
which could happen. I don't know how that'll hit.
You know, and going back to that, I'm just very skeptical about the time frame of all of this, right? Because just last year he had the #1 record, and he talks about it with "I Love It." You're such a fucking hoe. I love it.
Yeah.
So a year ago, and we know he always had faith, right? If you go back to Jesus Walks, and there's other instances in his catalog. Like we're a year away from your such a fucking hoe. I love it.
But that's what I'm saying.
And like what? I'm trying to figure out what was the light switch. Like when was
I
it?
totally get it because you have to look at the decade.
And that song was terrible, by the way.
Yeah, that song was really,
No,
really
the
bad.
song was trash. But you
And
have
it was
to
a
look at the
#1 record.
decade of Kanye, and I think it speaks to the decade in music in general. You know, Kanye is someone who loves control and hates being controlled.
Right.
And he starts the decade off, you know, with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, with Yeezus, and his ego getting so big. And now we're living in the decade he created. Like, same thing when, like, you're watching, like, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and he's, like, rummaging through his wife's, like, closet and trying to shape her
Yeah.
into this sex symbol and trying to get her on the cover of Vogue. He created all of this, and now on Jesus is King, he hates what he's created. He hates that, like, oh, I was a sex addict, and now, like, I've turned my wife into the most popular figure on Instagram, and people are thirsting after her, but now I feel sinful for it. I created all this music, like misogynistic music, calling women this and that, and now I can't do it anymore. Like now I gotta like make an album that ridicules all that. He hates what he created.
But
Yeah.
my thing is, what happened? Because
you're the turning point. You're saying.
what was the turning point? Because you
Yeah.
made New Body.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
I
New
get what
Body
you're
was
saying.
supposed to
That
be on this album.
That New Body record was supposed to be on the album, and because it's not there, that does speak volumes.
like when and it makes me there's something happened in your life. Was there this event that made you just turn your life over to Christ in totality, or was it a marketing meeting?
I honestly think that, like, he said it a little bit in Big Boy, like,
Which was a great.
it was a good interview.
The Big Boy interview was actually really good.
When he
I got a lot out of that. Sorry not to cut you off. I got a lot out of that though.
when he started talking about it, I realized, I'm like, oh, like what Kanye went through last year almost destroyed him. Like he went through the TMZ thing, the slavery comments. Ye wasn't received that well. The bipolar diagnosis, he was going back and forth. I truly do believe that he got to a point, and I think it was a lot of the addiction stuff as well, because like it almost seemed like his family and Kim has like to her credit, has really stuck by him. I think everybody was like starting to like distance themselves, and it got to him.
But he's been here before. He even has, and it's actually a dope line on the album. I bleached my hair for every time I almost died, right? Which was wordplay, like was really kind of clever. But even in the Big Boy interview, though, he won't admit because he's like, I've been canceled before. I've been through this before. The Taylor Swift thing, you know, the car accident, his mom passing away. Like he's been through these events that, you know, the Pablo tour when he runs off a stage and checks himself into therapy, rehab, what have you. We've seen Kanye be here before. So what made last year so different?
Because I think like, and he even talked about it on Ye. I do think it was the fear of losing his family.
Right.
Because, you know, the fear, like everything that his mom's death, you still hear it in the music. He's still heartbroken about that. And he finally got a family, and on Ye he starts talking about almost losing it, and then he goes really off the rails with a bunch of the TMZ stuff, and I think you start realizing that like, oh, on this album at least, I really do feel like he almost lost all of it, his family, which means more to him than anything.
And this is a great point. Sorry, not to cut you off, because I think nobody's talked about that yet. One of the great points on this album, and one of the real bright spots, is the emphasis on family. As I don't like Close on Sunday as a song. I think the Chick-fil-A meme is kind of cheap. You know what I'm saying? It's just a cheap metaphor. But I mean, he is talking about, hey, like Sunday, like put the Instagram down. Like let's talk as a family. There's a lot on here about him connecting with his dad, and stuff like that. So there is an emphasis on family, and I realize it as you make this point on this album that nobody's talking about yet.
The other thing too, though, he also makes mention of his of people that he admired leaving him. Like I can't remember what record it is, but he makes mention of saying my legends left me, or they left me behind, or something like that. So yeah, I think a lot of that does play into it. I think Kanye is going through something. What I did take away from this album, though, I feel like he is in a better place. I feel like he's a little bit more sound. I feel like he's happier of sorts. I just don't know, I guess, how long that will last.
I got that from the Zayn interview. I didn't get that from the Big Boy interview.
Yeah.
The Big Boy interview to me was a little.
He was a little bit more like
unhinged.
charged up.
Well, he was charged up, but just because I think that Big Boy in classic Big Boy, he goes right at you. Like he's
Big
not
Boy
gonna
asked some
hold
good
punches,
questions.
and he had amazing questions where. This was the one time where Kanye couldn't dip out of the conversation where he normally does with talking about something spiritual, and then by the end of the conversation, you don't even know what question was asked. You don't even know where he stood with it. Whereas Big Boy kind of kept him in a certain...
Well, I think it was the locales of it too.
Yeah.
Because the Zane Lowe, I believe that was in Wyoming, and it seemed like the Big Boy was back in Calabasas.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that was because a record that was cut off the album was one where he was talking about like LA having like demons and it being this horrible place. I do think the geography of where he is. Like LA haunts him in a way. And when he's in Wyoming, I think he's a little bit more like calm and like it's over. And he talked about it in the Zane Lowe interview. He's like, I feel kind of at peace here.
Right.
And you can see in Big Boy, I'm like, oh yeah, you're back at the compound and you're like ready to go.
Right. Yeah, I wish him peace, man. I hope, like, really in listening to this album, I hope, like, if he's in a good place and he's in a peaceful place, and, man, all for it. Like, go. Like, who am I to tell you different? And the music is good. It's like some classic Kanye-isms. It's not his best album to me by any stretch of the imagination. I like it better than Ye. You know what I'm saying? And the place that he's in. But I don't know how I will feel, or even just his fans, like the people who've been riding for him since the beginning, if by the next album cycle, the whole thing just changes and flips on this.
And that's my biggest fear, honestly. That's my only fear. I think the album is dope. I get it. But if I hear another album after this where you are talking about secular and you are getting back into the rapper,
you know what I could see? I could see I could just see a world where this happens. The next album, there's curses, there's a little more, way more secular, and then, hey, what happened? And well, you know, Jesus lived his life among sinners. He wasn't with the saints. He was with the sinners to convert. So in order to reach my message, this is what I have to do. I could just see him.
Well, also, do we feel about this album, the one thing I wanted to touch upon is like some of the politics on it are very messy.
Yeah.
Like some of the, to me, especially like the sexual politics or the politics about women, I'm just like, yo, this is one of the reasons, like, I'm still a Christian, but I distance myself from the church. Because, like, even the Instagram comments, I'm just like, why are you trying to police
Oh, the Instagram got your bitch.
Yeah,
Comments?
like
Yeah.
a lot of the comments in the music, I'm like, why are you trying to police women's bodies or what people find attractive or like porn and strip clubs and sex work? It's a bunch of stuff that I'm like, Kanye, like, please just stop. Because like he said himself, I'm like, yo, you can't be up on stage at the Pornhub Awards one year and then basically trying to demonize sex workers the next year. It seems a little, that's too
actually
much.
That's a
that-
good point. And what happens with that Pornhub deal when you think about
Right.
it? That is a really, really good point. That porn, I completely forgot about the Pornhub thing.
Right.
Yeah, this is why I'm concerned.
But
you
this
can't
goes,
do
this
that.
goes this goes back to my thing that it just happened so quick that a year ago, a year and a half ago, you were in one place. And look, you're entitled. I'm just wondering what happened. What was the flip? And it goes back to my question again. Was it something that happened in your life that led you here and say, fuck it, I'm going to violate the Pornhub deal. We're going to cancel this because this is not who I am anymore. I think that's okay. You know what I'm saying? I think it's okay to move on from that. But again, was it something in your life that happened or was it a marketing thing that happened?
Everything's
is my main
marketing.
question.
When it comes to rappers,
Right.
everything is
Yeah.
marketing. Like to hold Kanye or any rapper, like I look
Above
at
that.
above that, it's just kind of like, oh, you're pitching me a product and I get this. That's why, honestly, most of the times when I listen to an album, I'm like, oh, this is a product that I pick up in a store. And honestly, anything past that, the emotions and everything are stuff that I'm putting onto it.
Right. You know, I get it, and I think you're right. I think a lot of the politics are messy, but I do think he makes good points about the hold that social media has over us. I didn't read the Instagram has your bitch comments as policing, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I didn't realize it until you said it. I didn't think about it, but it's normally the first place, and beyond women's, man, when you get a good fit off, you take that picture. It's normally the first place we run
Yeah.
to it, and the validation of getting likes. How many likes do you have, and all of this, I think can be potentially damaging to the things that he's talking about: the family dynamic, the connecting with one another, the sitting down and talking. Like, we're really getting into this dangerous place. You know what I'm saying?
The viral video that was shared a couple weeks ago, where Kim and him were arguing, and Kim was just like, "Yo, just because you're in a new space,
Facts.
don't force that on me." And you kind of like try to help me become this person, like. Don't kind of like try to police me now that you don't like it. And I felt Kim very much because I'm like, yo, Kanye, just because you're in this ultra religious place, don't try to like put down women or their sexuality or even people who like watching porn or like going to the strip clubs. I'm like, there's this very, very dangerous thing whenever you go into church or Christianity where they're always trying to kind of like tamper down like your sexual drive and your urges. I'm like, that's a little bit too much. Like,
Right.
this is not the Old Testament times.
Right. No, absolutely, man. And I agree with you in that, like, wholeheartedly. But, you know, there is a conversation that needs to be had about porn. So, look, I got a 14-year-old son, right, who looks up porn on the internet.
He's real.
It's what we do. Like, I
real.
get it. So I'm not mad at him for that. But it's talking to him in a way of, all right, the things that you've seen are not real. That's not really how sex goes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, depends.
Except unless you're Brandon, and every sexual experience is you know what I'm saying? Like you know, it goes back to the thing with social media too. It's a version of reality. It's also maybe a heightened version of reality. But
Yeah. You got to be able to draw the line though. Right?
but if you're
Like,
a 14-year-old or just somebody who's highly impressionable, a fan who follows everything that Kanye does.
oh yeah,
Like and can't really think for yourself or haven't developed that part of your, like, how do you know? Like if
Well,
all I know is
you
porn,
won't.
I'm assuming this is how sex goes.
See, I'm not a father yet, so I can't speak
Right.
to it. All I know is that like every generation has that thing
Of course.
where we like, whether it's people thinking like rock and roll is devil's music, whether it's, you know, seeing magazines and you wanting to be that star. Social media is very intense in a different way, but I'm like, every generation has these things that they're fighting against and these vices. And to me, it's interesting to hear in the music, but sometimes I'm like, all right, let's not blow this out of proportion. Like, humans are still humans, and there's going to be something after social media, and there's going to be something after Instagram. And at the end of the day, to me, it's a very like, all of the albums recently, like Drake is touching on Instagram, Kanye's touching on Instagram, J. Cole, Kendrick. I'm like, you guys are news dads. I get it. This is the thing. You're worried about your kids. Great. It's not a banger, but
But the other thing I think too is the reason why they do that is because their kids are being scrutinized and stuff like that. Like, of course, Instagram and social media plays a huge part, but I feel like it's twofold. As an artist and as a public figure, you're gonna that's part that comes with it.
Right.
I think they levy that when it comes to them and when it's really starting to hit. Like when you see Kim getting killed, when you see Drake getting killed, like they start to make mention like, all right, this is starting to really affect my home. Like
right.
when I close this app, I want to leave it, and you guys it's trickling into my home now.
Yep.
That's when they go on the parade of, all right, hey guys, social media is horrible. Stay away from this right now. This is the devil's platform. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's what people do. And it's just like, come on, man. Just roll with it. Like, just roll with it. It comes with the turf. You asked for this shit.
Like when the biggest rapper in the world takes a jab at you on
like,
Joe Budden's IG Live. I feel you. I was just a target minding my fucking business.
That's what I'm saying. It's the truth. It's the truth.
Let's get to final thoughts. Let's get back to the music. We're gonna close up, man. Charles, final thoughts on Jesus is King, man.
Yeah, I just think it was not his best album, but just such a way to end the decade, man. You started it off calling yourself Jesus, and now you're just so upset. Everything you built, you look at your kingdom, you're like, I messed up. So classic in that regard.
Brandon, man, final thoughts.
I think sound body of work, lacking lyrically on his end. But I think it's I can listen to it. Like it's good. I will say it does make me feel good. Like and it kind of sets me up to hopefully he'll keep on this path, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a good album. It's cool. You know, I think as art and where like really good art is polarizing, is that. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna make you feel one way or another.
Yeah.
Definitely not his best work to me.
Yeah, no. Not at all.
But it's cool.
Hey.
And we want to know what you think. You know, I'm in the comments. I know y'all gonna have a lot to say. We about to get killed. We about to get roasted.
I'm sure.
But I'm in there. I'm in the trenches with y'all. So I'm gonna be there commenting back. I like to thank Charles. I like to thank Brandon for coming and being our guest today. And thank y'all for watching. This is For the Record. Peace.